Hi everybody, Colin here from Colin's Engage. Just a video which I didn't have planned to do, but this weekend decided to zone my layout for reasons of new trains. So I'm just going to explain what I've done and what's been quite interesting about it. So, my problem was these American trains and that green one there. The green one, not as bad. The Challenger was signs of a problem coming, but these two diesels, which are monsters, and of all of those four, including that, has sound. And the Americans like to have it started when you turn your power on, the sound starts. Which, in a way, to me is a bit silly, because when workmen get to the job to drive the train, it's not going, they've got to start it. So all the British stuff, you turn on, no matter what it is. But the problem is, they draw a huge amount of power. So with all the other trains, lights on the Pendolino, lights on that, lights over here on that one, all the lights on the engines, what I may leave on, because with this controller it remembers everything I last did. So this had to be looked at, because if I actually started the layout up and put, say, that one on, the engine would start and nothing would happen. It was that sudden rush of everything on the layout wanting to see the power, and it would just fuse out, just do a little zzzt noise, and this red light here would come on. But now it doesn't, because what I've done is zoned my layout. So I've tried to draw a sketch, and I hope it doesn't confuse you. The dark colour is the original. Just ignore that dotted line for now. So it went out from my smart box all the way around, as you do, continuous, and to a stop there. And that worked fine until I got more and more engines. And as you know, I started to get more and more sound. So I had to come up with something, and what I decided to do was zone it. So that dotted line means I took it out, the start out of the smart box, and connected to the end, because I wanted zone 1 to start. The pencil now is the dark original bus route cut, so I wanted to start from there, which is roughly that area after that maze of crossings and points. So that's the start of zone 1, and it goes all the way around through the station to that point, which, excuse me turning, which is roughly where those points are, and those up on the top. And I cut the bus wire. First I cut it there and there, plugged it in to the smart box, and everything still worked, because, as you know, points have a solid rail going through which connects to the next bit, but it doesn't on the frog, but it does each side. So I had to find out where the zones were. So with this being the last bit, I had to start it isolating here and then isolate those. So they've all now got plastic rail joiners on. So that is in zone 1, and as it turns out, that one's in zone 3 and that one's in zone 4, but I'll explain that. So that's 3, that's 4. I'll explain that later. So I isolated this side and then had to do the same over here. Isolate this end, which was the same thing. Put plastic rail joiners in, cut the track where I could, and sort it that way. Great, absolutely super. I got my first zone totally isolated. But what we found out, even though, excuse me, going back to the plan, this was cut off from the rest of the bus, it was going up and down the droppers. So it was going, it feeds the track up above, but it also was taking the power down, travelling along the bus route, and then finding another way up, which was getting into different zones through the points, those continuous metals. So that was something else to consider. But once we got one, we did two. So that started there to there. And the same thing. Turned it on, and this is zone 4 and that is zone 3. Still worked with power just in zone 2, which zone 2 is fiddle yard from that point to certain points here, with plastic rail joiners in. So that's in zone, that's actually in zone 2, and that is because of the scissor crossing. So it just makes it easier because they have a lot of lines and a lot of bits. If you've seen these, they're quite complicated, the scissor crossings. So it was easy to do it like that. So we got it zoned, basically 3 and 4. But what I had to do was put some switches on. So the power comes out of the smart box now into a junction box, a little clip, what sends it out in 4 directions, and then one switch feeds zone 1, 2, 3 and 4 switches. But I have to have 2 switches for each because there's a live and a positive and a negative. As you know, mine bus route is white and blue. Now, if I only wanted to zone it for starting, for the initial problem, I could have left, say, the blue wires are continuous and just switch on the white, say the positive side, whichever it is. But I also wanted to do it for fault finding, because then if something fuses now, I can just go through my switches, and when it fuses it, I know it's in zone 4 or zone 1 or whatever. So that is going to help a lot. In hindsight, if I knew that having a lot of engines and a lot of see, just one other thing before I go any further, I have auto frogs which are connected to the bus, and they was transferring power because as it, you know, they was taking it up and down the droppers. So we had to put them all into zones as well, which was easy enough. It only happened where it was close to the brakes. If a point was in zone 1, but the actual Autofrog was plumbed into 2, that's where it affected it. So I just had to reattach it, because it was just easier to put it in that position. So, but in hindsight, I should have zoned it. I believe Chris Carter in Australia, he does his. But I'd already started. Didn't know I was going to get as big as I was. I didn't know I was going to get into sound. I didn't even know I was going to enjoy running some different engines from different countries on my layout. But that's one thing we learn as we go along. So that's how I did it on plan. And these are my switches here. And eventually it'll have zone 1, marker 2, 3 and 4. And now when I start it, basically I do the top one first, then the bottom one, and as you can hear, the start now, the Pendolino's lit up because that's in zone 1. Any lights what are on the actual engines, they're on, and I don't seem to have a problem starting now. I even had a problem starting it. I'll just turn them off. I even had a problem starting it at 5 amps with everything connected and everything on the actual track. Now it's starting at 2.5, because I run it at 2.5 when I've got sound and 4 engines going, because I find that's the best ampage for it. So that was zone 1, but now if I wanted to, I don't have to have zone 1 on. If I wanted to use the fiddle yard, just the fiddle yard area, that isn't on at the moment because those coaches are lit. But if I want to, I can turn just zone 2 on, and then zone 3. If you look at that engine under the big coaling tower, let me find my switches. That's zone 3. And if you look at the Pennine 68, that's lit up, and as I said, that will light up on 4 because those 2 tracks are on zone 4. So that's my problem solved. Very interesting. Like I say, hindsight's a great thing. Could have built it with zones. If I build another one, and it's a big one, and hopefully it'll be bigger, then I'll zone it straight away. But you learn these things. I actually went into a model shop who actually, they build layouts for people. I'm not going to say who they are. And they've never come across it. But I must be over 50 locos of different, DMUs to HSTs, diesels and steams, and it has now sort of caught me up. If I didn't have these Americans, I wouldn't have come across so much of a problem, because it would have started up, because the 3 zones what I've just started have most of the engines on, but it's just one of them things we learn, don't we? And I'm hoping by explaining this, if in the future any of you have a problem it helps you out. I mean, I do watch Chris Carter, but he just says I zone mine for finding errors, which I thought was a great idea, but I didn't think I was going to come across a problem like this. But I had already started mine. So the problem has been cured. So I do hope it helps people in the future, and whoever's starting a layout, especially if it's a big one, to consider it. And there's one thing for certain, I am so glad now also I do all my points and all my future signalling in DC, because that would have been even more power going out. So I am very pleased now that has been cured, and it's going to help solve problems if we've all had the issues of maybe expansion of track because of the heat we've had over the last few months when it ain't raining. And if there is such a track problem, I'm going to find it really easy, because it's going to just say, look in that area. At first it was very hard to work out why it was fusing. To be honest, logic says it's your track work. What's at fault? But it wasn't. It was the amount of engines and lights and stuff drawing. And this controller is a bit more sensitive, possibly, because there's it's more technical. I don't know, but if it is, it's actually helped for doing these, for finding faults. One other thing, just to show you what I was up against. Zone 2, 3 and 4 are on, because I've just shown you that with the different coach lights, trains. I'm going to put on Zone 1. Now, there is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 British engines on the layout. But there's still these 3. And it's these 2 really. But listen to what happens when I flick them on. And that is on. So if I try and put this here, you'll see the light and you'll hear the noise it makes when I turn it on. So that's the top one, and now the blue wire. That noise, and it's fused it, because it just can't cope with all the other engines and lights on to turn them on. So that is why I've done that. So if I just turn everything off, so they're all off, and then just turn Zone 1 on, make sure that my controller's green, ready to go. It starts. And little things like that, or those buffer stops, they take power out of the track, so that's a little bit more. It's all little fractions. So, and I did try turning the sound off before I turned the power on. Still didn't do it. It was still saying, the chips inside were still saying we need a lot of amps, a lot of power please, and it just wasn't working. And that was even trying to start it with no sound at 5 amps. well, I hope that was interesting and helpful for maybe someone who's starting a biggish layout in the future and knowing that they're going to have a lot of locos to maybe zone their own. It's quite easy to do. You just, when you're laying your track, you just need to isolate segments. So if anybody else has had any problems in the past, it would be interesting to know if anybody else has. And I thought I'd just share that with you. So leave a comment if you're new. Please hit the like button, hit the bell, so you'll see future updates, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.